What's up guys, Readiness Reviews here with you again. If you've picked up any rough condition Milsurp rifles and you'd like a few pointers on what to do to get them cleaned up and range ready, this is the video for you. You might recall recently I unboxed 3 Carcano 1891 Mosquito rifles from Royal Tiger Imports. These 3 carbines were extremely inexpensive, coming in at only $100 a piece, but for that very low price point, we received pretty rough condition rifles. Missing parts, slightly broken, and pretty darn dirty. In this video, we're going to be covering my cleanup process for these 3 rifles, which is essentially my standard cleanup program on any Milsurp that comes into the collection. Before we go any further, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like seeing these military surplus firearm videos here on YouTube, and to subscribe to the channel to catch all of my future videos. Now let's take it on over to the desk. Now these Carcano triplets came pretty darn dirty. Of course, I have seen much worse. These rifles had their fair share of dirt and dust and grime and rust. The internals are coated with a pretty hefty serving of Cosmoline, and all of that needs to be cleaned, and the dirt impregnating the wood on the stock kind of rubs off on your hands, and that needs to be remedied as well. First things first, and that's to get the barreled action out of the stock, invert the rifle, and remove our 2 action screws. Sometimes these screws will need some oil, maybe even some heat, because every now and then they will be rusted in place. This rifle is not too bad, however. Pull the trigger guard / magazine assembly out, and then the stock comes right off. The inside of the stock channel does have some dust and grime, a little bit of Cosmoline here and there. The barreled action again has some Cosmoline and just needs a general cleaning, but is not particularly bad by any means. Since Cosmoline is the main foe that we are tackling at the moment, I will let you guys in on the method that I've gone to after years of cleaning up old Milsurp rifles, and that is a good bath in some diesel fuel to dissolve Cosmoline. This barreled action is fresh out of the stock, but I have another one of our trio that has already had its bath in the diesel to loosen up all that Cosmoline, both the barreled action and the small parts. Now I have allowed this barreled action to soak in my diesel fuel tank for about a week. We can definitely tell that the gloopy Cosmoline has changed states a little bit. It is still present. This is freshly out of its diesel bath, so everything is still a bit moist. Now traditionally to clean up Cosmoline, you would either use a heat gun to melt it and then wipe it up, or you could use chemicals like hoppies, denatured alcohol, acetone, any other solvent will break up Cosmoline just fine. I, however, am always searching for an easier way. So we have all of this gunky Cosmoline on the inside of the receiver here. So I should just simply be able to take this towel, reach my hand down in there, and give it a wipe, and wipe it straight off. No scrubbing, no heating, just simply wiping the Cosmoline away. It is no longer sticky, it's just mushy and soft, and it wipes away with very minimal effort. For the parts that are hard to reach with a towel and a finger, I'll get in there with a Q-tip, and that Cosmoline wipes away just as easily with that. Trust me, I've done almost every method for Cosmoline removal that you can imagine, and this diesel soak is certainly one of the most efficient. It does require a little bit of investment, buying a PVC pipe, capping it, and filling it with diesel, but if you're going to be processing a number of Milsurps every year, just like I do, it most certainly pays for itself. Now I put this barreled action in that tank without removing the small parts, but those do need to be taken out and cleaned. So we got a little punch here to remove this trigger pin. That's a little bit odd, but that trigger pin has a slight bend to it, and it was kind of tough to get out. But the Cosmoline should have worked its way all the way down into these small parts, and it'll be the same deal with that. Just wipe them with a cloth, and they'll come away clean. We have all the little bits for the trigger assembly. Now you could pop these in an ultrasonic cleaner if you wanted to, and that's pretty effortless cleaning, but I feel an ultrasonic doesn't really get rid of Cosmoline the same way that the diesel just kind of dissolves it, and all you have to do is wipe it away, just like that. That is a pretty clean piece with very little effort. So I'm gonna work my way through all of these little trigger parts, giving them each a good little wipe down. And when you run into a smaller portion like this, get in there with the end of a Q-tip. With diesel, you have absolutely no danger of causing any rust or damage to anything. It doesn't mess up bluing. It can affect certain paint finishes. So if you have a painted firearm, You might not want to do this, but for most of your old school Milsurps, diesel doesn't hurt anything. Diesel's also generally safe to handle, unlike gas. Diesel doesn't off-put fumes the same way gas does, and so it's safe to keep in an enclosure like that. The desired effect of the diesel can be achieved by kerosene as well, but kerosene is increasingly hard to find and more expensive. In the past, it was a byproduct from producing gasoline, but nowadays that is not really the case, and kerosene needs to be purpose-made for the most part, causing its cost to increase significantly. The rest of this Cosmoline removal is just so straightforward and simple. I'm just going to go over every nook and cranny of the barreled action, wipe it off with my shop towel to expose my clean metal underneath. If I run into any spots that need some additional help, like around this rear sight for instance, I will use my toothbrush with a little bit of hoppies. I could also dip straight into my diesel over here and use that if I didn't want to use the hoppies, and get in there with the toothbrush and give everything a good scrub, and that'll get the crud out of those nooks and crannies that are hard to get to with the rag or even the Q-tip. It should take minimal effort to loosen up anything that you would need to because the diesel's already done most of the work for you. Now check that out as compared to that. Now we do have some bits of rust on this particular rifle. I've gone over how I tackled that a couple times before in other videos, so if you're curious, I'll post one of those videos right here for you, and you can go over and check that out. Let's take a look at our bolt here. So this is what we're dealing with fresh out of the diesel bath. Just like the bolt that we looked at previously in the video, this one had Cosmoline on it when I pulled it from the rifle. But here in real time, I have wiped it down, and all that Cosmoline is gone. The internals still need to be cleaned though. That slick, shiny surface is a perfect example of how the diesel works its way into every nook and cranny. I'm pretty surprised at how clean and nice the spring on the inside of this bolt looks. I was expecting something much worse. I've had these Ethiopian Carcanos have springs that were rusty messes, but this one is in perfect shape, still shiny, and I just love that none of this cleaning is going to take any scrubbing. I'm literally just taking the gun apart and wiping it down, that's it. Now the bolt face is one of those places that does need some special attention. So like on the rear sight, I'll get in there with my toothbrush and a little bit of hoppies and give that a good scrub. And in literally just a couple of minutes, I'm confident in these bolt parts being clean enough to be put back into operation. Since there's no major rust or anything that needs to be taken care of, I'll just hit these with a little bit of oil, reassemble them, and slap it back in the rifle. And the last major component here is our trigger guard / magazine assembly. And we'll do the same thing to that, just wipe it off, disassemble it into its smaller parts, wipe those down individually, and as long as we don't have anything else major that needs to be corrected, slap it on back together. We do need to address some basic bore cleaning though, so let's open that can of worms. Now bore cleaning is a topic that I've never really covered here on the channel. The reason for that is because it is such a controversial topic and everybody has their own method. I can't do a general maintenance video without discussing it, at least some though. So all I can show you guys is what works for me, and that's it. I use a Tipton extra long carbon fiber cleaning rod on all of my rifles. I use a wire brush. This one is heavily worn. It is 25 caliber, which is fine for a 6.5 Carcano. The bore of this rifle is already coated with diesel fuel. So all I'm gonna do is wrap a patch around this wire brush and run that down the bore from the chamber end to not damage the crown. That was my first pass. I have a brown, ugly patch, and it is wet from the diesel in the bore. Now that I ran that first patch through, just to grab some of that diesel, I'm going to work this wire brush back and forth, vigorously scrubbing the inside of the bore and loosening up as much debris as possible. Time for another dry patch. And I'll push this one through and then pull it back through. Now I expect to burn through probably a dozen patches or so. The fact of the matter is, you're never going to get a bore as clean as it can be until you shoot the rifle. So initially, with bore cleaning, all I'm trying to do is get it just clean enough for me to feel confident about shooting it. And in reality, it's almost there after just those couple patches, but I generally go a bit further than that. We're going to employ the help of my old standby Hoppies number 9 once again. We're going to wet that bore brush and now give it a scrub with a bit of solvent. If you stress about cleaning your bore until the patch comes out clean, you're usually wasting your time. On a rifle such as this, that's over 100 years old, fired corrosive ammo, and not really maintained to the highest standards for the last century, you're never going to have a perfectly clean bore, and you will be pulling out gray patches until your hair turns gray. You're better off cleaning it until you know it's clean, and then shoot it, and then clean it again, and call it a day. The main color of patch that we need to be worried about is brown patches, which this rifle does have, and that's going to be indicative, of course, of bore rust. We want to clean as much of that as we can. You can boil and card the bore of a rifle if you'd like. I'm not set up for boiling an entire barrel yet, but I will get there at some point. After boiling, you card it with a copper bore brush. White vinegar also does a pretty good job at dissolving rust. Now that's the patch after the Hoppe's number 9, completely black. And I'm just gonna cycle from scrubbing to patching to scrubbing and patching. Between each step, I'm taking a look at the bore to see how it's looking. And when I reach a point that it's eye clean, which is pretty close to there right now, I'll call it quits until I get it out to the range. And I'm not gonna stress out about cleaning it until the patch comes back out white. After all those solvents and scrubbing, there is one last step that I will do before calling it a day on the bore, and that is to wrap the brush with another patch, put some ballistol on that, and then run this ballistol patch down the bore just to protect things until I do get it out to the range. I love the smell of ballistol in the evening. Well, at this point, we have our bore range clean. We have the metal parts in pretty good shape. Let's move it on over to that stock. Now, I do this next step with almost every rifle that comes into my possession. This stock is pretty dark and dirty on the outside, but it's nowhere close to the worst that I've seen. Just to get some of that grime off, I have some Murphy's oil soap here, diluted in hot water. I'm gonna soak that up with a dirty old rag and give the wood a good scrubbing. And this will get off all that dirt and grime in a very gentle method without damaging anything. This Murphy's oil soap starts to dry really fast too. And I'm not going super hard. I'm just very leisurely wiping everything down with our soapy water. You can tell the color difference on this rag. So now all the dirt and grime that was on the stock is right where we want it on the rag. For the outside of the stock, I will allow this Murphy's oil soap to dry. Once it is dry, which it's already doing here in the middle, I'll hit it with 1, maybe 2 coats of boiled linseed oil massaged in with my hands as I've shown in previous videos, and call the outside of the stock good. I've had some controversy around this practice in the past, but as always, I scrub the inside of the stock channel with a toothbrush and ballistol. I won't make you guys sit through that in this video since I've done it in previous videos, but since the wood is touching the metal, it makes me feel a little better to have that wood ballistol cleaned. Now that we've gone over sort of the general maintenance portion of this video, let's look at something a little bit more specific to these Carcano rifles. So each one of these rifles had something wrong with it. They're either missing a part or have a broken part, or the stock's broken, or something's wrong with each of them. On this example that we've been cleaning throughout the video, aside from missing the handguard and the butt plate, it's in pretty good shape. This barrel band, though, is jacked up. You can see that's all bent. It's not supposed to be that way. And I'm going to see if I can get that to fit right quick without too much trouble. So I can actually almost get it to go on just by pressing with my hands here. Even though it is most certainly out of spec, I might be able to tap it in place with a mallet. That would save me some headache. Now I'm gonna try not to dig too greedily and too deep here and mess this up more than it already is. But if this works out, I'll be pretty happy about it. I'm basically just gonna start tapping it with my mallet here and see if I can't just tap it into place. Ideally, these go on easily by hand. You shouldn't have to tap them on and tap them off, but there's not really too much that's ideal about this particular World Tiger Imports example. So for a $100 rifle, we make do with what we have. And that's actually on. You can see light through the other side there. This side is gapped up just a little bit, but on this rifle, I don't even have a screw to go through that, so I can't fix it with the proper method anyway. So I guess a tapped on nose cap is just gonna have to be good enough for now. This example was missing the little sling bar. Of the 3 rifles, the one that was in the worst shape has an intact sling bar. So we're gonna do a little transplant. One of these 2 screws is in pretty rough shape. Although it's ugly, and this bit doesn't exactly fit, it is coming undone, and that's good enough for me. This other screw was in much better condition and came out far easier. With that being said, it's pretty messed up itself. These sling bars can be attached very securely. This one feels to be pretty loose. Whenever you're pulling one of these out, you want to kind of keep your finger along the wood line, because sometimes little chunks of wood will like to come out with it. This stock has some old damage from who knows what in the past, but since that rifle's in really bad shape, and this one is in pretty good shape, especially the bore, I think this part will serve better on this other rifle. Transplant complete. I'm going to finish reassembly on this, and we'll take it right back over to the couch for final thoughts. So that about does it for our basic maintenance and cleanup on the $99 1891 Carcano Mosquito from Royal Tiger Imports. Utilizing that diesel soak really does save a lot of time, and the best thing about that is you can literally leave it in the diesel for weeks with no ill effects. This rifle is essentially ready for the range at this point. However, it is still missing the butt plate, and until I have a replacement butt plate for it, I don't really want to fire it, as to not cause damage to the stock. As I'm sure you guys ascertained from the unboxing video of these rifles, I was a little disappointed in the condition they came in, even for their awesome price point, but the longer I've had them in inventory, the happier I am with that purchase. When it comes down to it, these rifles were worth every bit of $100, just in parts alone, so making that purchase is turning out to be a pretty good decision on my part. If they were to go on sale again, I might even pick up 2 more, who knows. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to give it the thumbs up to help it out with the algorithm. Drop me a comment letting me know what you thought about the video, and let me know some of your tips for basic firearms cleaning. Subscribe to the channel to catch all my future videos, and now I have 2 more rifles to clean up, so I will catch you guys in the next video. See you then. Peace.